What is up, everybody? Welcome into Saturday with Smoltz. John Smoltz, the Hall of Famer for the Atlanta Braves, is about to join me as he does every single week on Saturday. And we got some good stuff for him this week. One, Craig Kimbrel reaching the 400 save mark. Is Craig a Hall of Famer? And then that leads to a whole other conversation about the Hall of Fame. Billy Wagner, Andrew Jones. Really good discussion about the Hall of Fame there, as well as Alek Manoah on the mound for the Jays. What is going on with the big righty this year? All-star last year. This year it's been quite a bit of a struggle. So we talk about mechanics, the mental side of pitching, and of course the 300 elusive win mark. Justin is 54 wins away from 300 wins, and that might be the last pitcher that even remotely has a chance in history to reach the 300 win mark. Does John Smoltz believe we will ever see anyone get there again? And of course, the rule they're playing around with in the Atlantic League. The DH, should pitchers have to pitch longer? If not, you lose your DH. We'll talk all about that as well. This one's going to be fun. Without further ado, let's welcome in now Hall of Famer John Smoltz.
It's a blowout, 8th inning, 10-3. Bases are loaded for Verlander, who waits on a 3-0 pitch. He swings, and it's a high fly ball, deep center field. It is gone! Home run! And a huge bat flip to celebrate. All right, Ben, start the show already.
All right, and I am pumped, as always, to be joined by my friend John Smoltz. John, how are you doing this week?
Doing great, doing good, and on the tail end of my trip back home. So vacation's over, back to work.
Love that. So let's start this week with Alek Manoah. I've asked you a couple weeks in a row about some offensive guys. Last week we talked Max Scherzer. This week I want to ask you about Alek Manoah because he had announced himself to the league as one of the best pitchers in the game. This year, it's been a bit of a struggle for him. He has a 5.53 ERA. Walks are through the roof. He had 51 all of last season. He has 32 in 45 innings this year. When you see Alek Manoah this year, what do you think is going on with him?
Well, all things being central with him being healthy, you would think that he's out of his mechanics, and the walks really are alarming. I think you can point right to the walks and the commands. He's a command guy that can strike you out, but he pitches to both sides of the plate, and he's fearless with that. I remember talking him through the All-Star game, and his attitude and everything about what he did last year just seemed like he had arrived and had confidence through the roof and could throw the ball where he wanted to. And it just seems like, not seeing a lot of his starts, I'm just looking at stats, the walks are way too high. And in this league, when you have the new rules and the walks and the ability to take bases, and it's not the old kind of like slug it, walk, strike out, homer, I think that's a little bit alarming for me. And I think if he cuts down on his walks, which to me is all eccentric with his mechanics and his ability to throw the ball where he wants to, I honestly think that is going to be the case that makes the difference.
At what point, John, does something maybe mechanical or, struggles, at what point does it get to you and start becoming a little bit mental?
I think that creeps in when you start feeling like you have lost the strength of what you're good at. When you can throw to one side of the plate, that's a strength. When you can throw to both sides of the plate, I mean, that's when you're going to win a lot of games. Yeah. And I think if you lose either side of the plate, it starts becoming mental. And that's where you have to refocus on your mechanics and get back into the film and look at simple things to fix instead of trying to carve out the whole the whole pie. It
was you during the All-Star game last year, right? That was talking to him while he was out there, and you tell him what pitch to throw, and he punched the guy out?
Yes, he was about as great as an All-Star appearance with somebody that we've talked to I don't know that it'll ever get any better than that. We had been begging for a pitcher. He was willing to do it. He had success. He had fun. He had the right attitude. And I'm telling you that moment will live forever. Unfortunately for him this year, he's, far away from that moment of confidence, and the ability to navigate a game without the command is going to be an issue for him.
On to another pitcher reaching quite the milestone, John. Craig Kimbrel reaching 400 saves in his career. Only 7 others have done that, one being Kenley Jansen, who just did it. I remember growing up watching Craig Kimbrel with the Braves, and it was probably the most dominant I have ever seen a closer be. And there was a 4-year stretch where I would even compare that to Mariano Rivera. Obviously, Craig Kimbrel's career is almost in like 2 different parts. The dominant one of the best, and then has struggled as of late in his career. My question to you, 400 saves, he's going to keep going. Is Craig Kimbrel, in your opinion, a Hall of Famer?
Yeah, he falls into the Wagner discussion. I don't know why closers don't get as much pub and run in the Hall of Fame. I mean, Wagner, man, he was as nasty of a left-handed closer as you'll ever see, and maybe didn't amass the years and the quantity that Mariano did. But a lot of it also has to do with who you play for and what you've done. And I think the discussion always comes down to this. Is the length of dominance enough for Hall of Fame voters to see past the struggles? Because at the end of your career, if you struggle pretty much for 2 years, that clouds over the amount of greatness that you've had. And I've seen that through a couple players already who had a 10-year period offensively as a player like Andrew Jones. And I maintain he's a Hall of Famer.
I agree.
Hands down. But the last couple years of his career clouded the voters, in my opinion, of how he finished. And I've always had this discussion. If injury were to take, let's just say Andrew Jones, after the 10 years that he had, he'd be in a first ballot. But because he went 5 more years after that, then it's a little tougher. And I think the same thing can be said for some of these guys who have amassed numbers that we may never see again in the closer's role. And, there's so much volatility in the closer's role. I don't think we're going to see anybody amass these numbers again.
John, do you think you can play yourself out of the Hall of Fame?
I think you can play yourself out of the Hall of Fame in certain circumstances, because I think it's happened in some cases with the voters. Mm-hmm. And, again, this is always up to subjectivity of the voters and what they view as an important quantity or quality that you have to have. And I think I'm a big believer that if you've had a 10-year, 8-year dominant period and then it's interrupted by injuries or you don't finish quite as well as people think, I ask people that all the time. I ask voters, can you play your way out of the Hall of Fame? We've seen cases where injuries and or scenarios take players away from the game, but what they did was good enough and it got them in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I believe that's an interesting argument that is always up for debate. And I think Andrew Jones is a perfect example. I know people are going to think I'm biased, but there's no better center fielder for a 10-year period that I could ever imagine playing the game the way he did. And in the last 5, I believe it's 5 years, have really clouded voters, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And last question about the closers. I wonder if, in terms of the Hall of Fame, if, the 4th most saves, 5th, the 4, 5, and 6 guys, I believe it's John Franco, K-Rod, and Billy Wagner, they are not in the Hall of Fame. And my wonder is, are they getting compared to the Marianos and the Trevor Hoffmans with longevity and 600 plus? I mean, because to me, Billy Wagner is a Hall of Famer. So the question to me becomes, what more does a closer have to do other than be as good as Mariano and Trevor Hoffman?
Yeah, I think that discussion is going to fall in the categories of wins for pitchers. We're never going to see those again. So it's going to have to be some adjustment made to voters and what their eras they pitched in. No one's ever going to amass the kind of, I don't think anyone's going to get 400 saves again. I haven't seen who the next closest person is, but same thing with 300 wins. We may never see that if Justin Verlander doesn't get that. So I think voters are going to have to adjust and accommodate the ways that the game has been played and the usage of the guys that we're dealing with, not to mention all the injuries.
John, as you just mentioned, Justin's at 246 wins. So 54 wins away from the 300 mark, and that is going to be tough for him to reach. And then after that, who knows? So in your opinion, do you think we ever see a pitcher get to the 300-win mark again?
No, I really don't. I really think Justin's the last chance for that. He will get very close, if not get the 300 wins based on the way that I know he goes about his business. But I just think the era of wins and saves and all these things is going to be adjusted in time because of the way guys are used, the injury rate, and just the philosophy of baseball. We are going to see an uptick in wins, I really believe, because I think that it's the pendulum switching a little bit. And if it switches enough, we may get more pitchers going deeper in the game. But by no means do I think we're going to ever see 300 again. That is gone.
The last one I got for you, there's a rule that Major League Baseball is messing around with in the Atlantic League, I think to try and get pitchers to pitch deeper in games and to get more wins. It was basically goes something like you lose your DH unless the starting pitcher goes 5 or more innings. What do you think about that?
I love it. I often said that if they wanted to entice pitchers to and organizations to think differently, tie it to your DH. And then you got to have pinch hitters the rest of the way in. If you want a definitive advantage, you start getting your pitchers go 7 innings. You got an advantage over the rest of the league. I don't think that's a dumb idea, and I think it can tie right into the DH. And the longer you want a DH, the better your pitcher can be. That would eliminate the openers. That would eliminate the bullpen games. I think that's something that, again, in time, there's no such thing as a bad idea if you're trying to entice and coerce pitchers to just be in the game a little bit longer.
Yep, I agree. John, as always, my friend, I really appreciate it. Until next week, my friend, thank you.
Look forward to it.
All right, see ya. All right, just wanted to thank John Smoltz again for joining me. Always a blast of a conversation. And to me, Billy Wagner, Andrew Jones, Hall of Famers, put them in. I grew up a big Andrew Jones fan, wore number 25 for a lot of my life because of Andrew Jones. Grew up a big Andrew, Chipper, and John Smoltz fan. So to have him on and now be talking about Andrew Jones and playing with him and how good he was out in center field, I completely agree. Put him in the Hall of Fame, as well as Billy Wagner. I mean, just dominance in his career. That one to me is baffling that he has not gotten in the Hall of Fame. I absolutely believe he should. But again, thanks to John Smoltz for joining me. Always a pleasure every Saturday. Saturday with Smoltz. Always a fun episode. Thank you all for listening. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. It is free, so just subscribe. Hit that plus button, the follow button. Also on all social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and you can watch every single episode as well on YouTube at Flippin Bats Pod for all of them. Thank you, my friends. Until Monday, this has been another episode of Flippin Bats.